Perfect on the outside. From the outside, Sarah had what many would call a dream life. She lived in a beautiful home, had an adoring husband, and never seemed to have a single worry. When she walked down the street, hand in hand with Alex, neighbors often remarked how lucky she was. Her social media was filled with carefully curated pictures, romantic candle-lit dinners, vacations to exotic places, and handwritten love notes from her husband. Friends would often comment, "You're so lucky, Sarah," and she would smile, never revealing the weight pressing down on her heart. Alex was the perfect husband, or at least, that's what the world saw. He was charming, successful, and always knew the right things to say. At dinner parties, he would pull out Sarah's chair, pour her wine, and wrap an arm around her shoulder as if she were the most precious thing in his life. He never raised his voice in public, never showed the slightest hint of anger. Instead, he was the man everyone envied, the one who sent Sarah flowers just because, the one who spoke about her with admiration and love. But behind closed doors, things were different. Sarah had learned to play her role well. She smiled when expected, laughed at Alex's jokes, and brushed off any questions about why she seemed a little quieter than before. The truth was, she had become an expert at hiding the cracks in her marriage. She knew how to cover the bruises, not just the ones on her skin, but also the ones on her heart. It had started small, so small that she had almost ignored it. A harsh word here, a controlling remark there. "You don't need to wear that dress, Sarah," Alex would say, his voice calm but firm. "It's too revealing." She had laughed it off at first, thinking he was just being protective. But soon, his control seeped into every part of her life. He decided what she wore, who she spoke to, and where she went. At gatherings, if she spoke too much, Alex would place a gentle but firm hand on her knee under the table, a silent warning. If she spent too long texting a friend, he would take her phone with a smile and say, "Why do you need to talk to them so much? Don't I give you enough attention?" His words were never outright cruel, but they carried an unspoken threat, a reminder that she was his and his alone. Sarah had thought about leaving, many times. But every time she tried to gather the courage, Alex would do something that made her doubt herself. He would surprise her with breakfast in bed, whisper apologies into her ear, and remind her of the love they once had. "You know I only do this because I love you," he would say, and she would believe him, or at least she tried to. To the world, Sarah and Alex were the perfect couple, but only Sarah knew the truth, the dark reality that no one else could see. Whispers behind closed doors. At first, no one suspected anything was wrong. Sarah had always been the kind of person who smiled easily, who made others feel comfortable. But over time, those closest to her started noticing subtle changes, small, almost imperceptible shifts in her behavior that hinted at something deeper, something darker. Her best friend Emily was the first to notice. "You never come out anymore," she remarked one afternoon, her voice laced with concern. "Every time I ask, you say you're busy or tired. Is everything okay?" Sarah had forced a smile, waving off the concern. "Just a lot going on with Alex's work. You know how it is." But Emily wasn't convinced. Sarah's once vibrant personality had dimmed. She was quieter, more reserved. The spark in her eyes seemed to flicker like a candle struggling against the wind. And then, there were the excuses, the growing list of reasons why she couldn't meet up, why she canceled plans at the last minute, why she was always just a little too exhausted. Her mother noticed it too. During one of their Sunday lunches, Sarah barely spoke. She kept glancing at her phone, her fingers tightening around it whenever a message popped up. "Are you sure you're happy, sweetheart?" her mother asked gently, placing a hand over Sarah's. Sarah laughed, too quickly, too forcefully. "Of course, Mom. Why wouldn't I be?" The excuses continued. When her sister pointed out a faint bruise on Sarah's wrist, she brushed it off with a laugh. "Oh, I'm so clumsy," she said. "I bumped into the kitchen counter." But her sister wasn't convinced. It was the same excuse she had given the last time, and the time before that. Even her colleagues at work had started whispering. Sarah had once been the life of office gatherings, always eager to share stories or grab lunch with her team. But now, she kept to herself. She barely spoke during meetings, always checking the time as if she had somewhere else to be. Then there was Alex. He had always been charming, polite, a man who knew exactly how to make people adore him. But lately, whenever Sarah was out with friends, he would call her. Once, twice, 3 times, until she answered. "Just checking in," he would say, his voice smooth but firm. "You know how much I worry about you." The whispers grew louder. "She's not the same anymore. Something's going on with Sarah. Do you think she's okay?" But every time someone asked, she dismissed their concerns with a tired smile, a carefully crafted excuse. Because if she admitted the truth, if she let even one word slip, she wasn't sure what would happen next. And that terrified her more than anything. The hidden bruises. Sarah stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, her fingers tracing the faint bruise on her cheekbone. It wasn't too dark yet, just a subtle shadow beneath her skin. But she knew it would deepen by morning. She reached for her concealer, dabbing it over the tender spot with practiced precision. The pain no longer surprised her. She had learned to expect it. Her life had become a careful performance, each movement rehearsed, each word measured. She knew how to smile at the right moments, how to laugh just enough to keep suspicion at bay. No one could know the truth, not her friends, not her family, and certainly not the strangers who envied her perfect life with Alex. It hadn't always been like this. In the beginning, Alex had been gentle, loving, the kind of man who made her feel safe. But over time, something shifted. The first time he grabbed her wrist too tightly, he had apologized immediately, pressing kisses along her arm, whispering, "I didn't mean it. I was just upset." And she had believed him. But then it happened again, and again. At first, it was just words, sharp, cutting remarks that made her doubt herself. "You're so lucky I put up with you," he would say after an argument. "No one else would love you the way I do." And then came the rules, what she could wear, who she could talk to, when she could leave the house. The physical marks came later, a shove here, a tight grip there, never in places where others would see. Alex was too smart for that. When she flinched at his touch in public, he would laugh, brushing it off. "Sarah's always so dramatic," he'd joke, and people would laugh along with him, completely unaware. Sarah became an expert at hiding the evidence, long sleeves in the summer, scarves to cover the bruises on her neck. When her mother noticed the change in her wardrobe, Sarah had laughed, saying, "I'm just trying something new." When Emily pointed out the way she always kept her hands folded in her lap, Sarah had simply shrugged. But the worst wounds were the ones no one could see. The way Alex's words chipped away at her, piece by piece, until she barely recognized herself. She no longer argued back. She no longer spoke up. She had become exactly what he wanted, silent, obedient, his. That night, as Sarah wiped off her makeup, revealing the bruises beneath, she wondered how much longer she could keep pretending. Because no matter how much foundation she used, no matter how perfect her smile seemed, the truth was still there, hidden, waiting, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could hide. Control and manipulation. Sarah hadn't noticed it at first. The control had crept in like a slow-moving shadow, so subtle that by the time she realized what was happening, it was too late. It started with the little things. Alex offering to take care of their finances, saying, "You don't need to worry about bills, sweetheart. I'll handle everything." At first, it felt like love, like care. But then her access to money slowly disappeared. Her bank cards stopped working, and when she asked about it, Alex waved her off with a smile. "I just moved things into one account. It's easier that way." She had to ask for everything, groceries, clothes, even money for a coffee with friends. And when she did, Alex would sigh, shaking his head. "You don't really need that, do you? I mean, what's the point?" Soon, she stopped asking altogether. Then came her friendships. Sarah had always been social, the kind of person who lit up a room. But Alex didn't like that. Whenever she planned a night out with Emily or her coworkers, something always came up. I had such a hard day, babe. Can't you just stay in with me? If she insisted, his tone would change. You spend more time with them than with me. Do they matter more? The guilt was suffocating. She began canceling plans, making excuses. Eventually, the invites stopped coming. Her phone became another leash. Alex checked it constantly, scrolling through her messages, questioning every call. Who's this? Why are they texting you? If she hesitated, even for a second, his expression would darken. He never needed to raise his voice. His silence was enough. The coldness in his eyes made her feel like a child being scolded. Social media was out of the question. Why do you need to post pictures? Seeking attention? If she even glanced at her phone too much, he'd snatch it from her hands, laughing. No secrets between us, right? She lost more than friends. She lost herself. Her job was next. You don't need to work. I make enough for both of us. When she resisted, he convinced her to go part-time, then eventually to quit altogether. Just focus on us, on our home. Isn't that what love is? At first, she told herself it was normal. He just loved her. He just wanted to take care of her. But love wasn't supposed to feel like a cage. And yet, here she was, trapped. No money, no friends, no way out. Completely his. And that was exactly how he wanted it. A mysterious disappearance. At first, Sarah's absence was barely noticed. She had already been distant for months, canceling plans, ignoring calls, making excuses. But when even those stopped, the people in her life began to worry. Emily was the first to sense something was wrong. She had texted Sarah multiple times, each message left unread. Hey, everything okay? No response. Let's meet up. It's been too long. Silence. Then came the phone calls, straight to voicemail. It wasn't just Emily. Sarah's mother had been trying to reach her too. At first, Alex answered the calls. She's been feeling under the weather, he'd say smoothly. She just needs some rest. But when days turned into weeks, with no direct word from Sarah, concern turned to fear. She wouldn't just cut everyone off, Emily said to Sarah's sister one afternoon. Not without a reason. They tried stopping by the house. Alex always answered the door, his smile practiced and polite. She's resting, he would say. Stress has been getting to her. You know how she is. But they didn't know how she was. Not anymore. The neighbors, too, began to notice. Sarah used to walk outside every morning, sipping her coffee on the porch, waving at Mrs. Thompson across the street. Now the curtains were always drawn. The house seemed quieter, lifeless. Something wasn't right. Desperate, Emily tried one last thing. An email. If Sarah wasn't answering calls or texts, maybe she'd check her inbox. But as she typed out her message, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What if Sarah isn't the one seeing these anymore? Days passed, no response. And then, just when they thought she had vanished for good, a single text arrived from Sarah's number. I'm fine. Just need space. It didn't sound like her. It didn't feel like her. And suddenly, everyone knew. Something was very, very wrong. The secret journal. Emily sat on Sarah's bed, her fingers trembling as she flipped through the worn pages of the small leather-bound journal. She hadn't meant to find it. She had come to Sarah's house unannounced, desperate for answers. Alex wasn't home, and for once the house felt eerily quiet. She had almost given up when she noticed the journal tucked beneath a pile of scarves in Sarah's closet. Something about it felt important, urgent. Her heart pounded as she read the first few entries. I don't know who I am anymore. The words were scribbled in shaky handwriting, and as Emily turned the pages, the horrifying truth of Sarah's marriage unfolded before her eyes. The beginning of fear. It started so small, just words at first. Alex would make little comments about what I wore, how I spoke, even how I laughed. You don't need to be so loud, Sarah. It's embarrassing. So I learned to quiet myself. Emily clenched her jaw, her grip tightening on the journal. She had noticed the changes in Sarah, the way she had stopped telling jokes, the way she had begun fading into the background. The first bruise. The The first time he grabbed me, I told myself it was an accident, that I had provoked him. He apologized so many times, swore he would never do it again. And for a while, he didn't. But then it happened again, and again. And now, I don't even fight back. I just let it happen. Emily's stomach turned. She had suspected something was wrong, but she had never imagined this. The isolation. He controls everything. My money, my phone, my time. I don't even have friends anymore. Not really. Every time I try to reach out, he finds a way to pull me back. They don't really care about you, he tells me. And the worst part? I think I believe him now. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. Sarah had tried to reach out, but Alex had cut her off from everyone who could help. The final warning. I don't know how much longer I can do this. I feel like I'm disappearing. If something happens to me, if I just stop answering, stop showing up, please don't believe whatever Alex says. Don't let him tell you I left. Don't let me become another secret. Emily's breath hitched. The last entry was dated 2 weeks ago, the same time Sarah had stopped responding to messages. She slammed the journal shut, her hands shaking. Sarah hadn't disappeared by choice, and now Emily knew she had to act before it was too late. A cry for help. Sarah's hands trembled as she typed out the message. Emily, I need help. Please don't tell anyone. Just meet me. Before she could finish, the screen went black. Her breath caught in her throat. Alex had taken her phone. He stood in the doorway, his face eerily calm, but his grip on the phone was tight. Too tight. Who are you texting, Sarah? His voice was smooth, but she could hear the underlying threat beneath it. She forced a smile, her mind racing. Think, Sarah. Think. Just Emily, she said lightly. She's been worried about me. I thought I should let her know I'm okay. Alex tilted his head, studying her like a predator watching its prey. Then, without breaking eye contact, he crushed the phone in his hand and tossed it onto the floor. Sarah flinched. We've talked about this, haven't we? He stepped closer, his presence suffocating. You don't need anyone else. I take care of you. She nodded quickly, her heart hammering against her ribs. She knew what was coming, the punishment for disobedience. That night, the house was silent, but the walls held secrets. A stifled sob, the sound of something shattering, the quiet, trembling breaths of a woman too afraid to scream. The next morning, Sarah moved slower than usual. Her ribs ached, and a fresh bruise bloomed across her arm. But beneath the pain, something stronger stirred. Determination. She had tried to ask for help once, and it had cost her. But next time she would not fail. Next time she would escape. The final confrontation. Sarah had spent months living in fear, but tonight it would end. Her heart pounded as she stood in the dimly lit hallway, staring at the front door. She had planned every detail, wait until Alex was deep asleep, grab the emergency bag she had hidden in the closet, and run. She had memorized the schedule of the security cameras, timed how long it would take to reach the car. She had one shot. Taking a slow, steady breath, she clutched the doorknob, turning it as silently as possible. The lock clicked open. Going somewhere? The voice sent ice through her veins. She whirled around. Alex stood at the top of the stairs, his silhouette towering in the darkness. His face was unreadable, but she could feel the rage building beneath his calm exterior. I was just, she stammered, but the lie died in her throat. He descended the stairs, slow and deliberate. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? His voice was eerily soft, more terrifying than if he had screamed. Sarah's grip on her bag tightened. She had two choices, fight or flee. She darted for the door. Alex lunged, grabbing her wrist in a bruising grip. She cried out, struggling, but he was too strong. You think you can leave me? His fingers dug into her skin. You belong to me, Sarah. No one else will ever want you. But this time, she wasn't afraid. With every ounce of strength, she drove her elbow into his ribs. He gasped, momentarily loosening his grip. It was all she needed. She ripped free, throwing the door open and sprinting into the night. A car screeched to a halt in the driveway. Emily. She had come, just like Sarah had hoped. "Get in!" Emily shouted. Sarah didn't hesitate. She leaped into the car, slamming the door as Alex stormed onto the porch. His furious screams echoed in the night as Emily sped away. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps, her hands still shaking. But as the house disappeared in the rearview mirror, she realized something. For the first time in years, she was free. Truth unveiled. The news spread like wildfire. At first, people struggled to believe it. How could Alex, the charming, successful, well-respected man, be capable of such things? He had always been the perfect husband, the doting partner, the one who sent Sarah flowers, the one who spoke of her with admiration. But the truth was undeniable now. Sarah had spoken. It started with Emily. She had taken Sarah straight to the police where she had finally told her story. Every bruise, every whispered threat, every moment of control and fear. She handed over her journal, the proof of the torment she had endured. Then came the investigation. Neighbors who had once admired Alex now recalled the odd moments, the way Sarah had gradually disappeared from view, the quiet tension in her smile. Coworkers who had worked with him began whispering, remembering the way he spoke about Sarah in a way that seemed more possessive than loving. Even his own family struggled to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the one Sarah had escaped from. And then, the final blow. The authorities dug deeper, uncovering secrets even darker than Sarah had imagined. Financial fraud, hidden affairs, a history of controlling and abusive behavior stretching further back than anyone expected. Alex wasn't just a bad husband, he was a monster in disguise. The world that had once adored him turned against him overnight. The carefully curated image of perfection crumbled, replaced by the ugly truth. And Sarah? For the first time in years, she stood in the light, no longer hiding, no longer silent. Her story was no longer a secret, and Alex would never hurt her again. A new beginning. The first morning in her new apartment, Sarah woke up to silence. No tense footsteps echoing down the hall. No phone buzzing with demanding messages. No heavy presence watching her every move. Just the soft hum of the city outside and the warmth of sunlight streaming through the window. She was free. It hadn't been easy. The court hearings, the endless questions, the nightmares that still lingered. But each day, she grew stronger. She had reconnected with Emily, with her mother, with the people she had once been forced to leave behind. Slowly, she was piecing herself back together. She had even started therapy, learning to unlearn the fear Alex had planted in her. One day, as she sat in a cafe sipping coffee, alone on her own terms, she received an email. "Your story gave me the courage to leave. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone." Tears welled in her eyes. She had once thought her pain was just hers to bear, a secret she had to carry forever. But now she realized something powerful. By speaking out, she wasn't just reclaiming her life. She was helping others find the courage to reclaim theirs. With a deep breath, Sarah closed her laptop, finished her coffee, and walked out into the world, stronger, freer, and ready for whatever came next.